Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So today we are finishing up the grading every single general manager in the entire NHL, how they've done in their full tenure. We've done the Western Conference before in one video, then the Metro 2 days ago, and we were wrapping up with the Atlantic Division. And as mentioned before, with the criteria for this is not just this year. This is their entire tenure. It's a little bit difficult for some of the guys that are rebuilding right now. I can't give them fantastic grades like some of the guys I'm going to list right now until I actually see them make the playoffs or be in playoff contention. But everything they've done as general managers, trades, signings, drafting, basically those three things are the main things, but that is the criteria. So without further ado, let's get into it. And first off, I have Kent Hughes of the Montreal Canadiens. I'm going to be giving him a B+. Again, I think he's doing a very good job. Has he fielded an actually highly competitive team yet? No. Mainly because he got the job in 2022 and he's been rebuilding the last 2 years. And when looking at him right out of the gate in terms of rebuilding, in that spring of 2022, he sold very, very hard. Ended up trading Toffoli for a first-round pick that turned into Philip Mesar. Chirot for a first-round pick. Ended up becoming 31st overall, but still Chirot for a first-round pick was absolutely insane. Traded Lehkonen for a second-round pick, as well as Brett Kulak for a second-round pick. So immediately after getting on the job, a year removed from the Canadiens making the goddamn Stanley Cup final, Kent Hughes made the right decision to ultimately enter a rebuild. In that 2022 draft, he drafted Slavkovsky. TBD hasn't been the most encouraging, but playing better of late the last month or two. Philip Mesar, Owen Beck, who's playing he just got traded in the OHL and is playing much better. And of course, Lane Hutson. Then he would go on to trade Jeff Petrie for Mike Matheson. That was a very solid deal. He got a first-round pick to take on Sean Monahan. That was fantastic. Probably going to get a first-round pick for Sean Monahan in about 5 or 6 weeks from now. You look at it, got a second-round pick from the Carlson trade just to take some money on. Traded the 31st and 37th overall picks for Alex Newhook. I don't really love that deal. Newhook's definitely a solid young player, but that's basically almost 2 first-round picks. Didn't love that one. That's probably the one trade that I look at and be like, maybe you wouldn't do that. Newhook's still going to be an important piece of the core, but probably just a middle six forward. Signed Montembeault to a 3-year, $3.15 million contract. That's looking very solid. Cole Caulfield to an 8-year deal worth $7.8 million per. So overall, it's been very solid. What it's going to come down to is, does David Reinbacher pan out? Does Lane Hutson at the NHL level, is he able to defend and that offense translate? Does Slavkovsky turn into an elite first liner? So there's still a lot of question marks with this Montreal Canadiens team because they are so young. So I think a B+ is pretty fair for Kent Hughes, considering you can't give him an A- or an A when this year's like his best season with the team and they're on pace for like 80 points. So when looking at it, he's doing good, but only a B+. Kevin Adams, I'm going to go with an A-. I know that he hasn't made the playoffs with the Buffalo Sabres, but they almost made it last year. And this year, obviously, things have gone wrong. But when looking at him as a general manager, he took over in 2020 where Buffalo was going through basically their second rebuild in like 6 or 7 years, and he has really flipped the script. In that 2020 draft, he ended up taking Jack Quinn in the first round, 8th overall, and JJ Peterka in the second round, both looking like very, very good picks. That summer, he signs Taylor Hall. That doesn't really work out, but he's able to flip Taylor Hall for a second-round pick. Traded Brandon Montour for a 2022 third-round pick. That I didn't love, but I don't think Montour really had a long-term home in Buffalo going through that rebuild. He wasn't going to re-sign as an unrestricted free agent. Summer of 2021, arguably his best deal, trades Rasmus Ristolainen for a first-round pick and a second-round pick. That first-round pick becomes Isaac Rosen. Takes Owen Power in the 2021 first overall in the draft. That's looking pretty solid. Reinhart deal, although Reinhart might win the goddamn Rocket this year and is playing like a top 10 player, I still think given Buffalo's timeline, that was a fantastic deal for them. They obviously got Devin Levi as well as a 2022 first-round pick that turned into Jiri Kulich. Jiri Kulich, who obviously tore up World Juniors, is tearing up the AHL. Probably going to be a very, very good top 6 forward. So that deal is fantastic considering Reinhart was not part of their long-term plans as a 2014 draftee guy. That was very good. The Jack Eichel trade ends up getting an elite first liner in Alex Tuch that has 149 games and 149 points in 165 games for the Buffalo Sabres, as well as Peyton Krebs, who did kind of bust, but a first-round pick, which turned into Noah Ostland, as well as another second. So I think he also did a very good job with that Jack Eichel trade, considering Jack Eichel kind of openly wanted out, as well as dealing with serious injuries. That was a very good deal. 2022 draft takes Matthew Savoy, Noah Ostland, Yuri Kulich. That could potentially be an elite draft. I think that those guys are all trending to be 55 plus forwards. Will that happen in this Buffalo forward core? I don't know, but he's absolutely killed the draft. In 2023, he drafted Zach Benson 13th overall, already playing a decent role at the NHL level. So overall, I've loved this guy's drafting. And then you look at him locking up the core. He gets Tage Thompson on a 7-year, $7.1 million contract. Tage Thompson's now repeating the same season, but still easily worth 7.1. Dylan Cousins, 7-year, 7.1. Also having a bit of a down year, but I still think that's going to be a fantastic deal for a guy that's only 22 years old. Owen Power locks him up 8 years, 8.1. Still think Power is going to become an elite top pair guy, as well as Rasmus Dahlin, 8 years, $11 million. So overall, when you look at what he inherited, Buffalo was kind of an utter shit show, and he's built not maybe the core pieces of the core right now in terms of Dahlin and Cousins, but the guys that he's drafted over the past couple of years have looked very good in terms of the junior in the NHL level. So I really liked what Kevyn Adams has done. And considering last year they were a highly competitive team, I think they're going to finish better down the stretch here. I think they're definitely going to be poised to potentially make the playoffs. I never thought this was the year for them to make the playoffs. I had them at only like 88 points, but I do think they take another step this year. Number 3, Julien BriseBois. I got to go with an A+ on this. If I've been giving out A's to other guys that only have one cup, or I think I gave Jim Nill one that doesn't even have a cup, the guy that's only been there for 4 or 5 years and has 2 Stanley Cups as well as another Stanley Cup appearance, that is definitely going to get an A+. He got the job in September of 2018, so his first season. Yes, they do collapse in the playoffs after a 128-point regular season, but still fantastic, second best record of like the modern era. Then he ends up dumping JT Miller, which wasn't that good of a trade, but there wasn't really a spot for JT Miller. He wasn't going to explode the same way, so that wasn't that good of a trade. But you look at it in 2019, he bridges Braden Point at 3 years, $6.75 million, heading into the 2019-2020 season. They're yet again another contender. He goes kind of all in at the deadline that year, gets Barclay Goodrow for a first-round pick, back when Barclay Goodrow was an elite third liner, as well as Blake Coleman for a first-round pick. Those guys form the best third line in hockey by a mile, one of the best third lines ever, and are massive pieces to the Tampa Bay Lightning eventually winning that cup in 2020, as well as in 2021 as well, with also trading for David Savard. So when looking at him, Yzerman built basically the entire core of the Tampa Bay Lightning, but in terms of tinkering it overall, It was Julien BriseBois that really put the team together and led to them eventually going on that insane run in terms of an amazing regular season, back-to-back cups, then another Stanley Cup final. Of course, the one bad mark on his resume in Tampa is obviously the Tanner Jeannot deal. He ended up trading a first, second, third, fourth, and fifth round pick for Tanner Jeannot, who was going to be a restricted free agent, just wasn't the same player compared to his rookie year when he had 24 goals and 17 assists. That is the one horrible deal that he's done thus far, but I still think the honest success far outweighs that, obviously. He also traded for Brandon Hagel in 2022. Yes, he wouldn't really have the immediate impact in terms of the regular season, was solid in the playoffs, would go on to make the Stanley Cup final, and Hagel's been making $1.5 million the past 3 seasons to be like a 65-point guy, so that deal, although that wasn't part of the Stanley Cup runs, has been another fantastic, really outside-the-box deal. Yes, it was for 2 first-round picks, but you basically got 65 points for the goddamn league minimum. He also moved off Ryan McDonagh in the summer of 2022. People thought he was crazy for that. $6.75 million cap hit. Ryan McDonagh has kind of fallen off. That was another very solid deal. So overall, Julien BriseBois has done a fantastic job in Tampa Bay. I don't think I'm shocking anybody when I say that. Brad Treliving, I am going to go with a C. Very bad to mixed bag in terms of free agency last year. Ryan Reeves, horrible. Klingberg, absolutely horrible. Domi, pretty bad. Bertuzzi, production hasn't really been there. And when you look at it, the one good move that he did end up making was Martin Jones. Martin Jones has actually been a pretty solid starter for the Toronto Maple Leafs, kind of stabilized the goalie position, which is something in itself to be saying. Obviously, Wool did end up getting hurt. His one draft pick last year did pan out pretty well. Easton Cowan is tearing up the OHL right now, so I do got to give him some respect for that. He did get the Matthews extension done this most recent offseason, which was the right move. He probably asked for 13.5, 13.75 now, but he really messed up the William Nylander situation when looking at it. Probably could have got something done in the mid 9s before the season, maybe 10. Now William Nylander is going to be making a shit ton of money over the next 8 years. When you look at that, that was obviously a mistake for a team that's going to be very cap crunched next year with those 2 deals kicking in. It is less than ideal. Brad Treliving, not a good start in Toronto, and honestly, I would not be happy as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, so I think a C is a fair grade. Next up, Don Sweeney of the Boston Bruins. He gets an A. He was hired in 2015. After the Boston Bruins missed the playoffs, they were kind of on the way down, but since he's got there, they've been basically a perennial contender outside of his first season. His first big move was trading Dougie Hamilton for a first and 2 second-round picks. Those picks didn't really pan out, but when looking at it, I think it was solid value. I don't think Dougie Hamilton turns into Dougie Hamilton if he stays on the Boston Bruins. 2015 draft was absolutely horrible. We know the 3 guys that they took, and then immediately after, Matt Barzal, Shabbat, and Kyle Connor are the next 3 guys to go. It was horrible, but he did kind of redeem himself in 2016. Got Charlie McAvoy, I think 14th overall. Late lottery, he got Charlie McAvoy. McAvoy has obviously turned into one of the best defensemen in the entire NHL. And what really made the Boston Bruins such a high-level contender from 2016 on was the Pasternak and Marchand extensions. He signed Pasta to a 6-year deal worth $6.66. Basically, for that entire deal, he was a top 30 player in the entire NHL, top 10 towards the end of that. And Brad Marchand for an 8-year, $6.1 million contract that is still going on right now. He signed those before the 2017 season. So those are like 2 of the best deals of the entire decade that really propelled having your 2 best players, 2 top 15 players, basically from 2019 to 2022 at a $12 million cap hit. That's what some star players were making back then. So when looking at that really propelled them. Some other moves, Rick Nash deal wasn't that good though. First round pick and Ryan Lindgren for that. He traded Coyle for Ryan Donato. That turned out to be a very good deal, especially Coyle is balling out right now. People used to hate his contract. He has been well worth it the past 2 to 3 seasons. McAvoy in 2019, he got McAvoy to sign a bridge. 3 years, $4.9 million. McAvoy was already an elite defenseman then. Yet again, getting guys to buy in at low cap hits. Omar, 4 years, $5 million. Won the goddamn Vezina. His 2 other seasons have been like a 9-12 and a 9-15 season, as well as drafting Jeremy Swayman. That has obviously been a fantastic decision. That is their goalie of the future. I personally thought the Hampus Lindholm deal was a little bit of an overpayment in the moment, a first and 2 second-round picks. He was a top 5 defenseman last year, has been solid this year, not as many points, but still solid defensively. Last year, he really went with it with the Dmitry Orlov and Tyler Bertuzzi deals. Didn't work out in terms of them going deep in the playoffs. But I don't really put that on Sweeney. I put that more on the coach and the overall roster. They were up 3-1 and kind of just shat the bed. They were the best team on paper last year. He built that team, and you look at it this year, yet again, making solid deals. JVR has been one of the best free agency signings in the NHL, as well as Pavel Zacha getting that 4-year, $4.75 million extension midway through last year. That deal is looking very good for the Boston Bruins. So overall, basically, besides his first season, they have been a high level contender. When every single year, I've said it 1 or 2 times that they were going to fall off, maybe even miss the playoffs. I had them in the playoffs this year, but they have not, mainly because Don Sweeney is a fantastic general manager. Next up, Bill Zito. I'm going to go with an A for Bill Zito. You look at what he inherited in Florida. They were a franchise that hadn't made the playoffs since 2016. He got the job in 2020, and they didn't win a playoff series for 20 years. From 2000 to 2020, they didn't win a single playoff series, so he was in a pretty dire situation. In 2020, he signs Carter Verhaeghe on a 2-year deal for $1 million. That has obviously been one of the best deals of recent memory, and he re-signed him for 3 years, $4.16. That is also great. In 2021, he gets Gustav Forsling off waivers, fantastic pickup. 2021 as well, I mentioned before with Buffalo. He trades a 3rd-round pick for Brandon Montour, who's been fantastic for the team. Then 2 days later, during that 2021 deadline, trades a 2nd-round pick for Sam Bennett, who was like a 4th liner on the Calgary Flames back then. He has obviously turned into basically their 2nd-line center in a 55 point guy, fantastic physical player. And in the summer of 2021, he trades for Sam Reinhart, which again, it worked out for Buffalo in their favor, as I mentioned before, but in terms of Florida getting that immediate impact, fantastic first line 2-way player, that was a very good deal for Florida. He's been a massive piece of them the past 3 seasons. He did take a pretty big L on that Ben Sherratt deal that I mentioned before with the Montreal Canadiens. That was not good. Claude Giroux gave up a first-round pick in Owen Tippett. Owen Tippett's looking like a stud, but he just fully went for it in that 2022 season, and I honestly don't blame him. Again, they hadn't won a playoff series since 2000. He went for it. It backfired. Then, realizing it backfired, realizing this core maybe wasn't good enough, he goes out and trades Jonathan Huberdeau, 116-point Jonathan Huberdeau, for Matthew Tkachuk, gives Matthew Tkachuk an 8-year deal worth $9.5 million. That deal has looked fantastic. Kachuk's playing much better, especially of late. He's like top 3 in the entire NHL in the last 15 games in points. And then most recent offseason signs guys like OEL for dirt cheap. He really carried them while Montour and Ekblad were out most recently, as well as Evan Rodriguez has been a fantastic piece on that first line for the Florida Panthers. So Bill Zito has been very good for the Florida Panthers, and as a result deserves an A. And lastly, Steve Yzerman, A-. Really inherited another bad situation in 2019. The Red Wings were a perennial contender for 25 years. So naturally, they didn't have much at the end there. They kind of had to start from scratch. Raymond and Seider picks right out of the gate were fantastic. They have... I mean, Seider hasn't really taken that next step this year, but in terms of Raymond, he's playing much better this year after a bit of a down sophomore year. But those two guys look like that they could be very, very elite players. Seider already is a number one, in my opinion. Raymond, we'll see, as well as Edvinsson, ASP, Danielson, and Casper in the system. I'm not too high on Danielson and Casper, but Edvinsson and ASP look like they're going to be studs. He's going to need at least 2 of those guys, maybe even 3, to turn into stars for the Yzer plan to fully work, but when looking at it, they are building the right way. Last year at the deadline, smartly sells at the deadline in terms of Philip Hronek, as well as Tyler Bertuzzi, and you look at it, then he goes out and he trades for Alex DeBrincat at when it's so low of a cost, the first-round pick in Dominic Kubalik. You do that 9 times out of 10. The first-round pick that they got from the Tyler Bertuzzi trade, I can't give him an A or A+ yet, because although Detroit is pretty competitive right now, it is a lot of their older guys that are contributing besides Seider and Raymond. It's not a bunch of the Yzer plan guys, and they're not in a playoff spot quite yet, so I think an A- is fair. We'll see how it pans out. Again, they're going to need some more of the young guys to emerge. You can't be relying on the Shane Gothisberes of the world or the Andrew Kopps to be your franchise players going forward. Daniel Sprong, because those guys are probably going to leave Sprong and Gothisberer most recently. But when looking at it, it has been very successful in terms of Yzerman, what he started with compared to right now. They're definitely trending in the right direction. But that is it. I'm going to throw up the overall graphic of the 7 guys. I forgot Steve Stais. Can't grade him, obviously, considering he got on the job like 2 months ago. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about these grades? And I'll be seeing you in the next one.